Hi, so very nice to be with you again. So we're going to discuss another case study in your voyage in learning how to innovate healthcare. You know, a lot of talk about innovation in healthcare, innovation, innovation, innovation. But this course is about how you walk that talk, how you actually make those innovations happen. So in this case, Odontoprев, it's an entrepreneurial company like virtually all the cases that we've looked at. Actually, all the cases that we've looked at, there was an entrepreneur someplace way back in their history, or in our first case studies right now, they're startups. Odontoprев is a startup, and the person who started it up is still the CEO, but it's a big company now, and it's a very successful company. And it's an interesting company. It provides dental insurance, and it doesn't own dental practices. If it did own them, it would be what's called vertically integrated. In other words, it owns the factors that produce the dentistry, which is the dentist, and the insurance. But it's not. But what it does is it helps dentists to get better through various techniques, including auditing the practices to measure how good their quality is, and consulting to the dentist to help them be better at what they do. So Odontoprев has grown tremendously in Brazil. So Odontoprев is facing a new situation. It's reached a certain plateau in its business model, and it's thinking about what to do next. And we've seen this in virtually all our case studies. We're here, what do we do next? What this course is about reasoning what would be a good next step, a sensible next step, a viable next step. So in this case, the question is, do they go to different regions in Brazil? Brazil's a huge country, not relatively so many people, but a great big country, and they're very concentrated in a few regions. Or do they go to new markets in Brazil? Right now, they sell primarily to the corporate market. Should they go to the individual market, or SME, which stands for small to medium enterprise market? So that's one set of decisions that they have. But another is to continue in their present line of business and go to new countries. And they're thinking specifically about Mexico and Chile and Argentina, but really thinking about Mexico. So how do you answer a question like this? Do I stay where I am and go deeper into the country that I'm in, or do I go to a totally new country? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to apply our 6 factors analysis to the decision of whether or not to stay in Brazil. Then we will do 6 factors of whether or not to go to another country. And while we'll look at Argentina and Chile, I think it's pretty clear in the case that their heart is really in Mexico. And then whatever we decide, we'll look at the business model and see whether it fits well with that decision, or if not, whether the lack of fit is a deal breaker. So let's look at Brazil, and let's look at the 6 factors in Brazil. So in Brazil, there are a lot of dentists. So this is a structural aspect of Brazil. So what does it mean when you have a lot of dentists? It means that your prices are going to be cost controlled because there is a lot of competition among the dentists. Real plus. There are a lot of small dental practices that aren't consolidated. What does that mean? Good news for you if you're Odontopref, because again, they're small. They could benefit from the value-added services you provide them, a real big plus. Any negatives in the structure? Well, it's a huge negative. So there is a competitor company. There are some competitors, and it's called Amil. Amil is the subject of another case study of mine, and it is a vertically integrated health insurer. English, this means they own their own hospitals, they salary their doctors, they provide health insurance. It's a titan of a company and has a sideline in dental insurance, but the health insurance business is so much bigger business, they really haven't paid all that much attention to the dental side. But recently, an American company called United, another huge health insurer, bought Amil, bought them for about $6 billion. And it bought them to penetrate the Brazilian market. So, if I'm Odontopref, I would get a really serious migraine headache if I had read about the purchase of a rival by this deep-pocket American company that wants to get deeper in Brazil, because I would think that sooner or later they're going to get very, very serious about competing in the dental business. So another plus about the structure in Brazil is they're really not in the small, medium enterprise market. There are a lot of them. The Brazilian economy is a very growing economy. That's a plus. And the whole business still has relatively low penetration. Plus, Odontopref was purchased by a banking company, which has tremendous channels of distribution to reach individuals who do banking with that company. So the structure is a plus and the structure is a minus. Lots and lots of pluses. There is a lot of supply. There's a lot of underpenetrated demand. You've got a partner with great sales channels. Remember, we talked about sales channels when we talked about vitality. But the negative is this scary company that's just gotten acquired by an even scarier deep-pocket U.S. company that may become very aggressive in the dental insurance market. So give it, what do we give it? It's pretty good, but it's got a big negative on the structure. Financing. So Brazil's big, and you probably are too young to remember all of this, but Brazil was one of these countries with hyperinflation, where the currency became just diminished tremendously. But the government of Brazil finally got its hyperinflation under control, and Brazil, filled with brilliant, energetic, wonderful people, started growing. But the GDP growth has started to sputter. And Brazil does have this history of violent ups and downs. That's very unsettling for a business. Plus, the dental market, for whatever reason, has slowed down. They also have a very low ratio of expenses out of revenues that are paid for dental care. This is kind of a plus. The company's very profitable. Its profit margin is about double that of an American health insurer, but it may be too profitable. We'll get to that when we discuss public policy. So public policy in Brazil is aggressive. They aggressively regulate the pricing of individual plans, which makes it, from Odontoprev's perspective, even though it's a big market, with active government regulation of the pricing, it may not be such an attractive market. The government's not that active in regulating corporate plans, so where they are is a pretty good place to be as far as public policy goes. But if they want to expand to the individual market, they're going to face a lot more price regulation than they currently do. Brazil doesn't have a safety net for dentistry in its universal coverage, so that's a plus for Odontoprev. But it's got some big negatives. One is how profitable they are. And in part, they're profitable because they're very well managed and they have low administrative expenses. Give them points for that. That's hard to do. But in part, they're profitable because they don't pay out that much of every dollar for dental benefits. An activist government, a populist government, the kind of government that Brazil has, may focus on them and say, you know what? You're making too much money. You're paying out too little in dental expenses. You've got to lower your prices. Plus, the Brazilian government's pretty active in antitrust enforcement. Why is that important? Well, earlier we said in the structure there are a lot of little dental practices around. But is the Brazilian government going to permit Odontoprev to buy them up? Not so clear. Plus, it's very active in its oversight of healthcare. So the financing, good and bad, public policy, good and bad. What about the other of the 6 factors in Brazil? So let's turn, for example, to consumers. In Brazil, Brazilians like dentistry. So that's a huge plus. Americans may not care that much about dentistry. And there are some other countries that I will not name whose denizens are well known for their incredibly crooked teeth. So Brazil's not one of those countries. They like dentistry, they have beautiful teeth, and they've got a lot of dentists. Plus, Odontoprev has a great brand name. That's very valuable. People like Odontoprev and trust Odontoprev. A problem that may face them is that they have related businesses that are owned by Odontoprev and they sell those services to the dentist. If the consumers or public policy finds out about this, that's not something people love, that here is my purveyor of goods and services, and he's buying from the parent company all other types of goods and services. I think it's a little worrisome. What about the technology part of it? Well, if you're going to manage a dental practice or manage dental insurance, you need a lot of data. It's a financial business. You need to know a lot about your customers. It is data intensive, but dentistry is easier to keep track of than medicine. Not that dentistry isn't sophisticated and highly skilled, but there's not as much variety as there is in medicine. And Odontoprев has terrific IT software. Where the problem is in technology is when you're pricing an insurance policy, you need a lot of information about your potential customers, and they don't have it in the individual or the small to medium enterprise market. So technology, internally to Odontoprев, they're very wired. They're very good at what they do. But if they're thinking about going into the individual or the SME market, they've got some very serious shortcomings because they don't have the data that they can use to price the insurance policies accurately. So the last one that's left in Brazil is, are they accountable? I think they have very good accountability mechanisms. They conduct audits of the dentist, of the quality of their work. They benchmark the dentists against each other. They consult to dentists who need improvement in their quality. I think this is terrific. Plus, they have a very interesting insurance policy, which I love. It's a 3-year policy, and they will invest a lot in the beginning to prevent dental disease. The reason it's a 3-year policy is they hope that by preventing dental disease in year 1, they have lower costs in year 2 or 3. You know what? I'd love to sign up for a policy like this where my healthcare provider is interested in my long-term healthcare status. I think that makes them very accountable. Plus, they have personalized records. They have a call center. They have a lot of instruments of accountability in Brazil. So where are we on the 6 factors in Brazil? Well, on the structure side, there is a lot of opportunity for expansion, but Amil, its big competitor, is a very worrisome force. On the financing side, it could integrate a lot of small firms, but the economy is jumping around. It kind of makes me nervous. I'm sure it makes them nervous. And what makes them nervous is that Brazil, which had a history of disastrous bouncing around, is starting to bounce around again as an economy. Public policy is kind of worrisome. Brazil is a very populist regime traditionally. They're vigorously antitrust. They are interested in doing what's right for the people, which a government should be interested in doing. And they regulate the individual market. They may force them to lower their prices. So public policy is kind of worrisome from Odontoprev's point of view. Technology, they're good. They're very good at it, but a worrisome thing is if they're going to go into new markets, individuals, small, medium enterprises, they don't have the data. Accountability, wow, are they strong in it? And consumers, they're positive toward dentistry, positive toward Odontoprев, but if they find out about these related businesses that are owned by Odontoprев, that soup may get a little spoiled. So Brazil, I don't know. It looked superficially like it's a great market to expand in. Lots of unsatisfied demand and lots of supply of dentists you could use to satisfy it. But there are negatives. The new markets, individual, small, medium enterprises, much more highly regulated. plus they don't have the data about those markets. Emil is waiting in the wings and may just spring as a massive competitor, especially given the profitability of Odontoprев. So let's look at Mexico. Let's look at the first of the 6 factors, and that is it's a very large market. They don't have as many dentists. No country has as many relative dentists as Brazil, but there's a growing number of dentists. It's very close to the U.S., of course, borders the U.S., and medical tourism, which is where people go to other countries or other states within the U.S. to get their medical care, it is conceivable to me that a number of people on the border between the United States and Mexico would go to Mexico for their dental care if they were assured of pretty good quality and a reasonable price. And Odontoprев knows how to do that. In fact, Carlos Slim, who is the richest man in the world, Carlos Slim is a Mexican, and he has opened a chain of hospitals solely to promote medical tourism to Mexico from other countries, obviously, primarily the United States. So Brazil and Mexico, they look pretty good. In fact, they're kind of similar. So Brazil is not the best in the world in transparency and corruption scores, not the worst in the world by far, but it's not like Switzerland, let's say. On the other hand, Mexico is very similar to Brazil on these transparency and corruption scores. So Odontoprев knows how to function in the Brazilian market with that kind of transparency and corruption, could probably do the same in Mexico. So what about financing? Well, there is a small but growing private health insurance sector. People are used to paying out of pocket for health insurance or health care, and there's a rapidly growing middle class, and the Mexican economy is not bouncing around in the worrisome way that the Brazilian economy is bouncing around. What about public policy? Well, Argentina, which is another country they were thinking about, it's very aggressive about regulating health insurance prices. Mexico, not so much. Plus, the Mexican government is very focused on expanding access to care. And in countries like that, private sector enterprises are welcomed because they are used by the middle class and above, and they enable the government to focus on the poor and to make sure that poor people get the access that they need. So public policy is a positive, financing is a positive. Structurally, the only negative is there are not so many dentists, but the number of dentists is growing. So how about consumers? We don't know. Probably they don't like dentistry as much as the Brazilians, but any middle class and above kind of country wants to take care of their teeth. How about accountability? Well, the accountability that's strong in Brazil is going to be strong in Mexico. Same kind of factors, and same thing for technology. They have very good IT. The dentists in Mexico, like the dentists in Brazil, have very poor connectivity, a very poor installation of IT. It's a positive. What do you think? Should they go to Brazil with new markets, to the individual or small or medium enterprises, or should they go to Mexico? Why don't you talk about it as a group? Let's come back and discuss it. So, in my view, Mexico is what they should do next. Structurally, even though there are fewer dentists, this is like a gold rush. So, you know, the gold rush in California happened when gold was discovered there, and everybody rushed out, and the first person to claim a mine was a winner. That's what it's like now in Mexico in the dental insurance market. There's very little dental insurance. If Odontoprev goes out there, it'll be like a gold rush. It'll be a first mover. Financing, I think, in addition to the Mexican market, there's a huge potential U.S. market from the states that border Mexico. And people in Mexico are used to paying out of pocket for their health care. Public policy, it's better than Brazil, Chile, Argentina. I say go to Mexico. Not an obvious conclusion when you first looked at this, given the lack of penetration in Brazil. So are we done? No, we have to see if the business model is such that if they go to another country, that business model, which has been very strong in Brazil, will be successful in this other country. So we're going to look at the business model. And as you know, we have these 9 elements to the business model, sometimes 10, depending on whether or not it's in a technology venture. Why don't you as a group discuss whether or not the business model that has served Odontoprev so well in Brazil would also work well in Mexico? And if not, why not? So let's look at the business model. Number one question is caveats. The data I have in the case, those are government data. They're as good as they get, so I trust the data. Second question is, what kind of venture is this? Because if we're going to analyze the business model, we have to understand what it is we're trying to do. Consumer-facing, integrator, or technology venture? Why don't you tell us what the answer is? To my mind, this is as clear an integrator venture as we've looked at. Odontoprev, it grew by acquiring and rolling up and understanding dental practices. And it said, we're going to give you the best value for the money. And they don't even sell to consumers, they sell to corporations. Integrator, integrator, integrator. So let's look at the next set of questions, which is it financially viable and how much would it be worth? So, is it financially viable? I love this model. You know, all along I've talked about fixed costs. Fixed costs to any financial person are very worrisome because if you don't have any revenues, you've got those fixed costs, you can't get rid of them. This model is very asset light. They don't own the dentists. They just integrate the dentists with technology advice, and they sell health insurance featuring those dentists. So, wow, what a model. If it's asset light, you do not need a lot of customers to break even. So I love them. Low break even point. Just love them as a business. This is a business judgment. Plus they have negative working capital. What does this mean, negative working capital? It means that their suppliers are financing the business, that the people who sell things that Odontoprев uses to provide its services, probably they're kind of slow in billing them, so that they provide financing for the business. In other words, Odontoprев gets to use the goods and services that they supply before they pay for it. Terrific. Again, from a financial point of view, terrific. They've got a diversified customer base, and on a break-even risk analysis, they look pretty good. So how about the sustainability of this financing strategy? Well, the revenues in Brazil might not be sustainable because a meal might create price competition. So in Mexico, it's virgin territory, and they don't have a meal there to provide price competition. Of course, they can't charge so much that people won't buy it. But in Brazil, they've been charging an amount that enables people to buy it, buy their dental insurance, but still maintain profit margins that are double those of American insurers. Probably could do that in Mexico as well. The one negative in Mexico is there aren't that many dentists, and they may not be able to keep their payments to the dentists as relatively low as they are in Brazil. But the number of dentists is growing. I'm not too worried about that. So on the financial viability valuation score, and with the consideration of the sustainability of revenues and costs, I think it's a very good market. And it's a huge market. It's large. It's underpenetrated. There's a growing middle class and above always want to take care of their teeth. Not everybody, but in significant numbers. Plus, they have a fantastic competitive strategy. If they go to Mexico, they will be first mover in the market, and first mover with a 3-year policy. So they keep their customers locked up for 3 years. Locked up sounds kind of negative, but actually this 3-year policy, it's a great deal. What they say to the customers is, we're really going to take care of you. We're going to make sure you don't get dental disease, but in order to enable us to make that investment in you, you have to stay with us for 3 years. I would buy that. I'm very interested in that kind of policy, but as a competitive strategy for first mover that has a 3-year insurance policy, I think financially they're great, and especially coupled with their competitive strategy. So we've looked at the competitive strategy, we looked at the financial viability, we've looked at the valuation, we've looked at the sustainability of the revenues and the costs. We still have to look at the managerial aspects. So Zanetti, the head of Odontoprев, and the founder of Odontoprев, I don't know about you, I think he's a terrific CEO. And he's trained a number of people. He's not one of these CEOs where it's all about me. He's got a team of people. He's very serious about building the company. You've got to watch the Zanetti tapes to get a sense of this person, of what this is one style of a very, very good CEO. So I think that management and the managerial systems he has built, first of all, they're very appropriate to an integrator kind of firm. They're very focused on costs and on quality. And secondly, because he has so many systems, it's not a personality-driven business, not a charisma-driven business. It's a systems-driven business. He can readily move them to Mexico. So what are the systems that he has? Well, he has great IT. He has quality audits. He has people who consult to dentists and very clear protocols for consulting to the dentists to help them become better at what they do. He's got very clear products. He's got great actuarial. Actuarial means he really understands his cost structure. These are all systematic things, and you can pick them up and move them from Brazil to Mexico. So initially, when I looked at this case and they told me they were thinking of moving out of Brazil, I thought, what? Huge country, growing country, under-penetrated market, lots of dentists. What? Didn't make any sense to me. But as you see from my analysis of what kind of firm it is, its alignment with the 6 factors, which is kind of worrisome in Brazil, and the strength of its business model and its ability to be portable, to move from Brazil to Mexico. Mexican strategy makes a lot of sense to me. So we've got one last thing. Is this a do good, do well business? Clearly it's do well. They do very well financially. In fact, they do so well that in Brazil, it likely is not sustainable. Do they do good? They're great. People need dental care. A lot of illnesses are derived from poor dental care. They need insurance. They offer them a good product at a good price. So I hope with this case that you've seen that the power of these frameworks in helping us to analyze yet another kind of business decision that innovators in healthcare face. Now, why don't you turn to the job of seeing how well you've worked as a group in analyzing this case?